Is everyone good to go? Stephen Miles, Queensland Premier. Everyone good? We have seen incredible acts of bravery continuing today, with families saved from rooftops and locals lending a hand to look after their neighbours. Many rescues have continued throughout the day as they did last night, and I want to thank our first responders for their incredible work, but also those good Samaritans, those Queenslanders lending a hand, mate for mate. Including we've had reports of people using mustering, choppers and fishing boats to rescue strangers or people they know around town. Everyone's working incredibly hard. Significant rainfall has continued to hamper efforts to get aircraft into certain locations. All of our agencies have plans in place to manage the fatigue of officers who've been working around the clock. I want to ensure the people of far north Queensland know that we have people on standby, ready and waiting to get in there and to relieve those officers who are tired. An attempt was made to aerially evacuate Wujal today, but unfortunately the rain and cloud is still too strong. Another attempt is now planned for 8 a.m. tomorrow. There's a very detailed plan underway for how to do that and then how to take care of them in the evacuation centre. The Bureau has officially cancelled the severe weather warning. We've seen water level drop over most of those catchments. It remains critical that the public continues to listen out for alerts. We're also hearing reports of wildlife. There are crocodiles in many of these waterways, so please take care around these floodwaters and especially take care if you're intending to drive. If the road is flooded, forget it, do not cross it. In some positive news, the Cairns Water Treatment Plant is now operating and is providing safe, clean water to the Cairns CBD and also to the Cairns Hospital. I want to thank the technicians who did a really great job of getting that operating again. It means we don't have to evacuate patients out of Cairns Hospital. The Defence Force has been providing fantastic support when and as needed. For example, they transferred blood from Townsville Hospital to Cairns Hospital to replenish their stock and then we're able to replace the blood taken from Townsville to Cairns to make sure Townsville didn't have to go without. I know there are still many residents without power, and for many that will continue to be the main inconvenience of this impact. Our power workers are working just as hard as they can to get that back up and running, but I know it's frustrating to be without power. I'll ask Laura from the Bureau to give the weather update.
Good afternoon. So as mentioned, the severe weather warning for heavy to intense rainfall was cancelled at 1:51 p.m. this afternoon due to declining rainfall rates in the area. So we're not seeing that very intense, very widespread rainfall anymore. We are still seeing some rainfall in the area, however. So this trend of easing rain is expected to continue. However, I want to make note that there's still a significant risk that we could see shower and storm activity. So while that widespread, very intense rainfall is moving on, there is still shower and storm activity in the area, which can still drop significant amount of rainfall, just not what we have been seeing in that past 24 hours. We will be issuing thunderstorm warnings as we move through the evening if they are required to inform residents if any particular storms are dropping significant amounts of rainfall. So in terms of the flood warnings, a number of flood warnings still remain current. So the major flood warning for the Daintree remains current, but we have started to see that river system decline as the rainfall starts to ease. Of note, we're still seeing severe flooding occurring in the Bloomfield River. So that's the river system that affects the community of Wujal. But this will gradually ease as we do start to see those rainfall rates easing this evening and into tomorrow. We have a moderate flood warning for the Barron River. So that has moved from major to moderate. So we are seeing a declining trend in that river system. And then in terms of our other warnings, we've got a major flood warning for the Herbert River, major for the Murray, moderate for the Tully. We're back down to a minor flood warning for the Mulgrave as well. So we're really just encouraging everyone in that area to stay up to date with the warnings, especially those riverine flood warnings as we start to see decreasing trends, and those thunderstorm warnings as we start to see potentially a little bit more rainfall activity. So stay up to date with what we're issuing there. Thank you.
Thank you, Prem. Good afternoon, everyone. From the very outset, I just want to say what has taken place in the last 24 hours has been an extraordinary effort by all emergency services, but also by many members of the public in terms of the rescues that they have performed. Substantial rescues also took place today, and the State Disaster Coordinator will give you a little bit more detail about that. Thankfully, to date, there has been no deaths or serious injuries reported as a result. There is a report of a death of a 71-year-old man at Holloways. Please note that this is not in relation or as a result of the event. This was a medical episode. CERT operatives happened to be in Holloways Beach and applied CPR for a considerable period of time, but unfortunately that gentleman passed away. Substantial resources from the police and other emergency services are moving north already. Many of those are pre-positioned in Townsville, ready to move into Cairns hopefully tomorrow morning when the weather subsides. This is not only to assist in terms of responding to the event, but also assisting with the recovery from the event, to provide residents comfort that police are in the area, but to also patrol our roadways. The situation is still significant in that part of the world. Can I please ask, if you don't have to be on the roads, to not be on the roads? We are concerned about obviously people being caught in flash flooding. So always remember, if it's flooded, forget it. Thank you.
Good afternoon. We've undertaken a considerable number of rescues today, and we are still very much in the response phase of this event. The area of concern today remains up around Wudjal and Djara, where we know a local resident has been assisting authorities and has rescued 8 persons using a vessel in Djara. This afternoon we made an attempt to get our emergency services aerial support into Wudjal, but due to the weather we weren't able to do so. We've been in contact with the CEO of Wudjal, who's confirmed that all persons there are safe and are on higher ground. There are considerable plans for the morning in conjunction with the ADF to be able to undertake an evacuation of Wudjal, weather pending. And those people will go to Cooktown, and we're working with the Cooktown Council to receive those people in Cooktown. We had a further 5 people rescued at Mount Malloy today from houses, 3 adults, 2 children, who were on roofs of houses from last night, and we were able to get our emergency services helicopter into those people this afternoon. And we had another 15 people rescued from a hotel roof near Cooktown this afternoon. Thank you to a local member with a mustering chopper that the Cooktown Police were able to engage. Did an incredible effort in rescuing those 15 people at Cooktown. So as you can see, we are still very much in response phase across the community, and we have another rescue chopper currently operating in the Daintree area this afternoon. Could I say that we've engaged through the Disaster Management Network with all the councils, and we are actively planning to be able to resupply food, water and medical supplies into all of the isolated communities. And with weather opening tomorrow morning, we're hoping we can commence that at first light in the morning. We've moved considerable assets this afternoon, aerial assets into Cairns, so we're pre-positioned, ready to go. And this morning I reported we had 307 people in our evacuation centre, I'm pleased to say that has now come down to 105. So can I just finish by thanking the community for working with us today. We've had considerable response today, and the community have been excellent. We've had no reports of people driving into floodwaters today. So if the community can keep working with us, another 24 hours, 48 hours, it'll stand us in good stead. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Operational tempo for Foreign Emergency Services continues to remain high, and I want to acknowledge all of our staff and volunteers from across Fire and Rescue Service, State Emergency Service and our Rural Fire Service teams that are out there and supporting community. But I also would like to acknowledge our absolute gratefulness for community's responsiveness and support over the last number of days. It's been remarkable, and we continue to seek that support over the coming days. The key message hasn't changed for us. This event is not over. The risk remains real, and we need the community to continue to stay informed, make good decisions, heed advice as it comes out. And when you don't need to be out and about, don't be out and about. We've got a lot of damage, a lot of hazards in the space. We need people to continue to remain vigilant and avoid complacency as we move through these next couple of days. If it is a life-threatening emergency, reinforce, use 000. If it's non-life-threatening emergency, please use 132500 or the SES Assistance app. And final message, and I know it's been repeated, but if it's flooded, forget it. Don't walk, drive, or walk into our swiftwater and floodwater environments. Incredibly hazardous and brings great risk to life. So thank you very much.
I mentioned we've had great support from the ADF, and so I'd like to ask the Brigadier to talk more about that.
Good afternoon. Our people on the ground with the Royal Australian Navy and the Australian Army continue to provide support. They're all local members of the community and working with Queensland Emergency Services wherever they can. With the weather clearing, we are able to support the Queensland State Government with radio reading support to move approximately 100 people up from Townsville to Cairns tomorrow to enable those people who've been on the ground some rest and recovery. We're also preparing to provide further support if required as the situation improves and we get better weather and a better understanding of what's happening on the ground. Thank you.
Can we just get your name and title, please?
Richard Peace, Brigadier, Commander 11th Brigade, Commander Joint Task Group 629.3. Bit of a mouthful. Sorry about that. Thank you.
Well, as the Premier said, it is frustrating for those residents of the region who have been without power now for several days. Around 90% of the households and businesses that lost power due to Cyclone Jasper have been restored. But power has now gone out in 45 communities because of the heavy inundation. So that sees 13,190 new households and businesses without power because of the heavy rainfall. We did plan to have power restored to all communities before the rain event started by the evening of Tuesday night. That expectation can no longer be met, and we will now see a longer period of restoration which could take several additional days. It's difficult to put a time frame on that now, as I'm sure everybody has seen the damage to the roads, the vegetation and the significant amount of water moving around the region still. A new restoration plan is being developed and we will update the public and the media as soon as we're able to do so. I also want to assure Far North Queenslanders that there are hundreds of power company crews ready and waiting for those waters to subside. We have crews as well ready to move up from Townsville and Rockhampton. They include crews that have already moved up from southwest Queensland as well to maximise and ensure that the process of restoration of power can be as rapid as possible once it's safe to do so. The other important piece of information to know is about the significance of the water moving down the Barron River. We have one of our clean energy power stations there, the Barron Gorge Hydro Power Station. There has been significant damage to the Kuranda Weir, which means that that power station is no longer able to operate and will be out of the system for several months. Importantly though, all 16 of the power station workers are safe. There won't be any access to the power station for some time. Notwithstanding, this is a key part of the generation system in North Queensland. I can still confirm that the power system has adequate supply to meet the demands of households and business going forward.
Well, one thing is for sure, when Mother Nature unleashes in Queensland, we always see Queenslanders at their best. And this weather event, of course, has been no exception. And we've seen Queenslanders at their best, not just with our dedicated frontline staff, but also with Good Samaritans throughout our state. So can we pass along a heartfelt thanks, both to our frontline workers, but also to those Good Samaritans that have been assisting those in need right throughout our state through this weather event. There, of course, needs to be more work done through that recovery phase and through that assistance phase. And to those folks who are still waiting for that assistance, help is definitely on its way. We're still working through the weather event at the moment to be able to get the help that is needed to those locations. And it's positive news to see that the rain is easing and that we'll be able to do more of that in the aerial assistance space, but there still is a huge risk for our communities around riverine flooding. So while we'll be working very hard with communities to ensure that we can get people to safe places and we can get people to places where we can start recovery efforts, also, we're advising Queenslanders across the state to make sure that they're heeding all of the warnings that are coming out through the Bureau and ensuring that they stay out of floodwaters, avoid floodwaters, and of course follow all of that emergency warning advice as it becomes available.
Sorry. No, sorry. Dr. Gerard, I'm sorry. I missed you before.
I've been asked to update public health advice with regard to the cyclone event and the subsequent floods. People should avoid walking through floodwater and mud as much as possible, as it might be contaminated with sewage and debris. This is especially important if you have open wounds or broken skin. Contaminated flood water and mud can carry a risk of infection. If you are involved in the cleanup that is to come, please make note of the following points. 1, wear water resistant or enclosed footwear in wet or muddy areas. 2, wear protective gloves if handling soil, mud or surface water. 3, wash thoroughly after contact with soil and muddy water. 4, wash your hands with soap and water or hand sanitizer, particularly before you eat or prepare food. 5, clean, then cover cuts, abrasions and wounds with a water-resistant dressing. Of particular note in far north Queensland, there may be an increased risk of leptospirosis and melioidosis following exposure to floodwaters. I'm going to repeat that. Of particular note in far north Queensland, there may be an increased risk of leptospirosis and melioidosis following exposure to floodwaters. Anyone who develops a fever following contact with floodwaters should consult their doctor as soon as possible. Symptoms might include chills, sweats, and headache. Also, if you have a wound that becomes red or sore after floodwater exposure, please also consult your doctor. If you do see a doctor, please make sure you tell them that you have been exposed to floodwater, because it does influence the approach. Several local councils have issued boil water notice and conserve water use notice across flood impacted areas. Please be alert to any changes in advice from your local council. In affected areas, people should bring drinking water to a rolling boil and then allow water to cool before it is used, storing it in a clean, closed container for later use. If you are asked to boil water, it is important to do so for drinking, brushing your teeth, washing and preparing food or beverages, preparing baby formula, or making ice. Once you receive advice that water is safe to consume, please flush the water for a couple of minutes to remove any contaminated water. Clean any flood-affected tap parts, including the tap screens and aerators, with hot water and detergent. I'll just remind you, this will vary from area to area. So it's specifically, if you are affected, have a boil water notice. So that will be notified by the local council in your relevant area. And just a brief word about food and medications. Food, liquids or medicines that have come into contact with contaminated flood water can make you ill and should be thrown out. Any perishable food that has been left unrefrigerated or above 5 degrees for more than 4 hours should be thrown out. If frozen food is partially thawed, do not refreeze it. The food should be eaten as soon as possible or thrown out. Wash any dishes, utensils and surfaces that have come into contact with flood water in hot, soapy, drinking quality water. Any items made from porous materials such as wood or porous plastic, including wooden chopping boards that have come into contact with floodwaters, should be thrown out. Dispose of canned food where the can is open, swollen, damaged, or has a missing or damaged label. If your vegetable garden has been in contact with flood water, the food may be contaminated and unsafe to eat. I might leave it there at this point. Thank you.
Thank you. From a roads perspective, the advice is really clear. Stay off the roads if you can. And has been said by the commissioners, if it's flooded, forget it. If a road is underwater, there's no way of knowing what the condition of that road is below it. Queensland Traffic is the best source of advice via phone or website for road closure updates as well. So most of the state-controlled roads in the Far North District are closed due to flooding or landslips. The Bruce Highway is closed from Townsville to Innisfail. It has reopened today between Innisfail and Cairns. There is significant damage on a number of other state roads. The crews are continuing to clear debris and undertake inspections, weather permitting, and where it is safe for them to do so, where the water has gone down. TMR will prioritise inspections and repairs on the Bruce Highway, the Coranda Range Road, which has had significant damage, and also the Captain Cook Highway.
Any questions?
Maybe for you, Premier, obviously there's a lot of resources that need to get into Cairns, and the airport is a great way to do that. How's that going?
There are some reports that the airport might be open by morning, and that will allow us to get those resources that have been forward placed in Townsville into Cairns. I might just check if that's... Did you want to... Yeah.
Thank you, Premier. The airport in Cairns is currently closed. Debris, water has receded and debris is being cleaned from the airport. I've been advised that there'll be an engineering inspection first thing in the morning, and that will determine the timing for the airport to open.
Sounds like a pretty impressive rescues today as well. Where is Northern? Around Lakeland?
So the rescues today were near Cooktown. They were also near Mount Malloy and at Dejara.
Do you have any idea of how many homes have been inundated yet?
Obviously the waters are really high. What I can say is as we were performing the rescues last night, we were seeing peaks of houses that were just pointing out of water. So we've been engaged with the Queensland Reconstruction Authority and the local councils, and we are expecting to see a significant number of houses, particularly in the Northern Beaches area of Cairns.
And is there an estimated damage bill at this stage yet?
No, I don't have that information.
People that were meant to be rescued this afternoon but are now being pushed back to 8 a.m. tomorrow, are they safe? Are they in a position that's good?
Yeah, so the evacuation tomorrow will be at Wudjil. We've been in contact with Wudjil, and we know that these are the people that we had some people on roofs last night who were all evacuated safely from the roofs. Everyone in Wudjil is on high ground and they are safe. There are a number of residents in Wudjil that haven't been affected by floodwater, so we're able to use those residents tonight. And when it's safe to do so in the morning, we're working with the council there. We're prioritising obviously our vulnerable people in the community, our elderly, our children, to get them out in the morning. But and we've been advised that some people will remain in town where they feel safe to do so to help with the clean-up efforts.
Is there anyone unaccounted for? You just touched on vulnerable people there. Is there a risk that people in that group might still be stuck in their homes?
No, we've got no reports of any missing persons at the moment. In my previous brief, I said we have not been able to get emergency resources into Dajara. We're being assisted there by a local male in a private vessel undertaking a number of rescues today, and I really commend that person for that work. That's an area of concern for me, and until I get rescue and emergency services into Dajara, I'll get that confirmation then. But in Wudjil, our Northern Beaches area where we were undertaking hundreds of rescues last night, my advice is we have no one unaccounted for.
How big is this by comparison to other disasters we've had? Is this, I mean, we don't want to use the word unprecedented, but how does this rank?
It's probably one for the Bureau to give us that records, but can I say from an operational perspective, this is a significant response. I'll reiterate, last night we performed nearly 300 rescues in the Northern Beaches area, and we know that over 200 people self-evacuated from that area last night. So we had extensive vessel resources in that area. All of last night and today we've been performing significant rescues off roofs, which will give you an indication of how terrible the weather's been up there. We have isolated communities literally from Cooktown to Innisfail, and we have a number of those communities that we'll be supporting over the next couple of days.
Laura, the severe weather warning has been defunct. Considering there's still a significant risk, why was it rescinded?
So the severe weather warning was for intense rainfall, and we're just not seeing those rainfall rates anymore. So while we are still seeing rainfall in that area, it's not in that severe category. However, if we do start to see those rates go up, or if we see those rates with thunderstorms, we will issue further warnings. But at this stage, the situation does not warrant any warnings.
Is this the worst flood disaster the Far North has ever seen? Where does this sit historically?
So I do have some historical numbers in terms of both rainfall and flooding. So we broke quite a few December daily rainfall records. So there was dozens broken from this event. I'll highlight a few now. So Cairns on the 17th of December recorded 268.4, and that was a record. So that broke the previous record from 1964. Mossman and Port Douglas saw in one day 429 millimetres, so that breaks the daily December rainfall record from 2007. And Cooktown also recorded 339.8 millimetres on the 12th, and that also broke the previous record, and that was standing from 1907. So there's also some other records in terms of what we saw in the flood peaks. So at the Daintree River, we saw a peak of just below 15 metres, and that previous record was 12.6. So we saw that break the record of over 2 metres, and that last record was from 2019. So we've broken that record. And then in terms of what we saw on the Barron River, so at Cairns Airport, while it wasn't record breaking, to put it into context, we saw peak flooding of above the 1977 level. So in 1977, we saw a peak of 3.8, and we haven't seen anything exceed that since this event, and we have exceeded that with a peak of 4.4 metres.
Given areas are already saturated, how much of a danger is it going to be if there is more isolated severe rainfall?
So due to saturated catchments, all these rivers in that area will respond very quickly to any more rainfall. And that's really why we're encouraging residents to keep an eye on those warnings, because they can change quite suddenly. So if we do see isolated totals falling from heavier showers and storms, then we can see rivers start to rise again, because they will respond very, very quickly in that area where we have all the flood warnings current.
How is the ADF expected to assist in this?
The Australian government have assured us that the ADF will be there to help for as long as we need them. Right now, they're involved in the immediate response, but no doubt we'll be calling upon them to help with the cleanup. I'm happy to get the Brigadier to talk about what other assistance might be provided.
Yeah, we'll go, sorry. Sorry, didn't see you.
No, that's all right.
Just sort of what the ADF are doing, like being the final.
So at the moment we still have our people who are already there locally supporting the Queensland Emergency Services through just local recovery arrangements. We've had Royal Navy personnel in particular have been out using their boats, augmented by personnel from the 51st Fire North Queensland Regiment. They're all locals, they know the weather. Something I will note was we've had reports of damage to our boats, and I believe that's also occurring to others. So again, debris in the water is a big issue for anyone out there on the boat to be aware of. Longer term, as the Premier said, that is probably a more government decision, but from a uniform perspective, we're here as long as we're required, noting obviously the situation could change at a moment's notice, and with luck the weather will improve, the water will go down, and we'll have a better understanding of what's required in the future. Thank you.
Just an estimate of how much this is expected to cost.
It's far too early for us to tell. The damage assessments haven't occurred yet, so we'll have to wait until then, but no doubt this will be a very, very significant damage bill.
Following the Brisbane 2022 floods, the effects of that were felt for over a year in some areas. Do we have any indication as to just how long this area will be affected from this disaster?
Well, that gives you an indication of just how long it can take to recover from these events, particularly houses. We will work just as quickly as we can to get the infrastructure back up and running. But you're right, it can take a long time to get houses repaired. One of the drivers of the current constraints on housing here in the southeast is still a carryover from those flood events.
Are there talks of recovery, sort of disaster payments? Obviously, so close to Christmas, people have lost everything.
Yeah, we have the hardship payments are already activated, but we will be talking with the Australian government about jointly funding further packages of assistance. We want to assess what the damage is first, because we try to make sure that those packages address the specific damage of each particular disaster.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.